You're listening to the Platform Launchers podcast. I'm John Stange. It's great to have you with us as always this week. Here we talk about building, growing, and monetizing your online platform. We want to help you take your passion, turn it into a platform, and let that become your paycheck. And we have a great time each week here on the podcast. I often tell you how prior to the podcast starting here, we have a great discussion with our members club. They're actually live on the call here with me. I was taking a little bit of an inventory of some of the states that are represented here, but we have two from Arkansas. We have one from Illinois. We've got a few Pennsylvanians represented. I see Tennessee. I see West Virginia. I see Florida. I see Arizona. I see where else? Texas. I can't forget Texas, right? A couple folks from Ohio. We have Georgia as well. And so a variety of states represented here, which is certainly a lot of fun. And we're grateful to have, some good representation around the country here. And we have a lot of good discussion on our call, even before we get into the podcast content here. And even afterward, we'll have some Q&A together with the group. But I posed this question to the group just a moment ago, and I'll bring it up here on our podcast as I did to the group. But the question we're going to be talking about this week is, are you trying to be famous or are you trying to be helpful? And I think that that's a useful question to wrestle with if you're trying to build an online platform, because in this era of online platforms and social media and everything that's going on, the cool thing about living during this era is the fact that the former gatekeepers who used to determine what content would be popular and what wouldn't have been, available to people, they have been replaced by the court of public opinion. Now, I'm friends with quite a few people who have achieved a level of notoriety in this era that would have been very difficult for them to have received or achieved at an earlier season of history. The opportunities that we have right now are unlike the seasons of life that have come before us or the eras of history that have come before us. And if you're in the midst of creating online content, I wonder what kind of effect do you hope that content will have on others? What do you want to ultimately achieve through the proliferation of what you're writing and recording? What's on your mind? What's the long-term goal? And I think in the most simplest terms, if I just simplify this the way I'm seeing it, or if I simplify this the way I think you could generally categorize those who create online platform-related content, I think there are two primary ways that question of what do you want to have happen with the stuff that you're creating. I think there are two primary ways that question can be answered. Either you want to be famous from it, or you want to be helpful with it. And one of those two desires is going to rank higher on your scale than others. For some people, they care about the fame. For other people, they care about helping others. One of those is going to be higher on your scale than the others. I wonder if you're familiar with the actor Bill Murray. Now, Bill Murray is somebody that I think I've been familiar with my entire life, essentially, and he certainly achieved a lot of fame during the course of his acting and comedy career. I'm certain that most of us here living in the United States have heard of him. He first became known to most people here in the United States when he was hired to be an actor on the second season of Saturday Night Live. I believe he was the guy that replaced Chevy Chase after Chevy Chase abruptly left the show. They brought in Bill Murray, and then Bill Murray's fame just skyrocketed. And then over time, he's been in a whole bunch of movies. I think some of his most popular movies have been movies like Ghostbusters, obviously super popular. The movie What About Bob? You ever see that one? What About Bob? That was with him and Richard Dreyfuss. Groundhog Day, every year on February 2nd, people often reference the movie Groundhog Day, or sometimes I'll see people say, I feel like I've already experienced this before. It's kind of like I'm stuck in Groundhog Day, referencing that Bill Murray movie. And I have to tell you, Bill Murray's one of my favorites because his personality, I just find it very entertaining. I guess that's his goal, right? If he's a comedian or an actor. But there's just something about the way he carries himself that I find easy to connect with. And in recent years, I've seen a variety of things about Bill Murray shared on social media that mention what a genuinely nice guy he happens to be. And maybe you've seen some of these things too, because what he likes to do, he likes to randomly show up at things like wedding receptions that no one knows he's coming to, but he'll find out that there's a wedding reception and he'll just show up. And obviously, it becomes a really fun experience for the bride and the groom and all the guests because all of a sudden this big celebrity is there at the wedding. He also likes to show up at other public events and he just hangs out with people and he poses for pictures or just tries to jump in the background of pictures because he knows that people are entertained by the fact that everybody essentially knows who he is. And even though he's one of the most famous people in this world, I get the impression that he's not too impressed with his own fame. And I want to share a quote with you. This is a quote that I heard that he shared several years ago. And I think it's really, really interesting to kind of note. And if you're not familiar with this quote, you might want to follow up on this and just do a little additional thought related to it. But he said this. He said, I always want to say to people who want to be rich and famous, try being rich first. See if that doesn't just cover most of it. There's not much downside to being rich other than paying taxes and having your relatives ask you for money. But when you become famous, you end up with a 24-hour job. So that's what he said. Said, people always say they want to be rich and famous. And he says, I don't know so much about the fame part. The rich part's okay, but, you're going to have to pay taxes. You're going to have relatives asking you for money all the time. But fame, that's a 24-hour thing. And I kind of get the impression that Bill Murray at times feels a little bit imprisoned by his fame, where it probably becomes challenging for him to do some, everyday, average, regular things that you and I take for granted because literally everywhere he goes, people recognize him. Now, he tries to have some fun with that, but there's a downside. And, again, celebrity status, it can bring a lot of benefits like fame. It could bring fortune. It could bring influence, all of those things, in the right hands. Those could certainly be useful things. But again, it's not all good. It comes with some pitfalls that I think some of us would prefer to avoid if we could. So think about some of the pitfalls. If your aim in building your online platform is fame, let me show you the other side of fame that I think Bill Murray is trying to allude to. First of all, one of the things you're going to have to get used to if you're aiming for fame is the loss of your privacy. I think one of the most significant downsides of celebrity status is the loss of privacy. I think celebrities often have to deal with constant media attention. That seems like it would get old really quickly. Sometimes invasive fans, when I see different people that are celebrities trying to go, I happen to see a famous baseball player who played for the Phillies. I saw him at a Wendy's when I was like, I don't know, 13 years old. Darren Dalton, he played for the Phillies back in the day. And he was just trying to eat a hamburger at Wendy's, and people were swarming him, having him sign all sorts of things. It made it very difficult for him to enjoy a normal meal. And in general, celebrity, that costs you the law. You lose your privacy if you become a celebrity, if you develop some level of fame. Or how about this? When we talk about the downsides of fame, there's a pressure to maintain a certain image. I think celebrities typically feel pressure to maintain, this appearance in public. I think it could be exhausting. I think it'd be emotionally draining. I think some of them get sick of it very quickly. They may feel like they have to be perfect all the time, that they can't age normally. And so they start looking kind of weird and doing weird things through plastic surgery and all sorts of things to try and keep their appearance looking like they're still 20 when they're 90. Any misstep they make in life, any mistake they make in life, it ends up getting magnified and scrutinized by the public. I think a lot of celebrities would also tell you that they have difficulty forming genuine relationships. They find themselves questioning others' motives as people are trying to hang out with them and spend time with them. They develop a hard time trusting people. They feel isolated. They feel lonely. One of the things we were talking a little bit about before we jumped on the podcast here are mental health issues. And one of the things that you could see with a lot of celebrities, especially those that gain fame at a young age, they seem to be at an increased risk of addiction and mental health issues. It takes a toll on them mentally. Many celebrities struggle with this. Many of them have just come out and admitted that they deal with depression, addiction, anxiety, other mental health issues that are directly tied to fame. And how about one more that I don't know that a lot of people think about when they get into platform development and they seek fame? What about the idea of the loss of privacy, not even so much for yourself, but for your family and friends? Because if you develop some level of fame, you're not the only one impacted by that. Your whole family starts to receive unwanted attention and unwanted scrutiny. Now, I'm certainly not a celebrity, but I'll tell you, most of my adult life has been spent serving in public roles, both offline and online. And I have 4 children. They are all essentially adults now. 3 of them technically are adults. One is like 5 minutes from technically being an adult. And so we talk about this stuff, and they will admit that that has not always been pleasant for them. The fact that their father has had such a public profile, both offline and online. And so for some people, when they develop their online platform, I think fame is the primary thing that they desire from creating their platform. And I think some of you, if you aim for it, you're going to achieve it. You're going to get your name out there. You're going to have some level of fame. There's even a book out right now called Micro Famous, and it's all about being famous even just in your own niche. But if I may, let me suggest a much higher aspiration than fame. I think there's got to be a much higher aspiration for us to be aiming toward if we're going to actually create content that truly has lasting value. And what I'd love to encourage each of us to aim for instead of fame is to just prioritize being helpful. Aim to be helpful, not famous. When you have a public platform, and many of the people that are live on this call with me already have public platforms, and some are developing these from scratch. Some are well established. Some are thinking about it. And if you're listening to the podcast or watching us on YouTube right now, when you have a public platform, you're going to recognize that you have the opportunity to use your influence one way or another. You could use your influence to promote healthy ideals that genuinely improve the lives of others, or you could use your influence in a negative way or in a self-serving way. I would encourage us to be magnanimous and generous with any influence that we happen to be blessed with. I'll tell you, one of my greatest joys that I receive through creating online platform content that gets shared publicly are the notes and the emails that I receive from people who listen to my shows or read what I've written, and they tell me that their lives have improved in some specific way. That is far more gratifying to me than fame. I would much rather be helpful than famous. Earlier this week, a podcast listener actually contacted me and told me that one of my shows helped her overcome a struggle in her life that she said she's been wrestling with for decades. So that's a message that I had the privilege to receive earlier this week. And it made me grateful that something that I had created was helpful to her. Just yesterday, I actually received 2 physical cards in the mail. One was a postcard and one was a regular folded card. The postcard was from a listener who listens to one of my podcasts every morning during her morning routine. And she's told me that over the past few months in particular, she's decided to make that part of how she starts her day. I thought it was wonderful to hear that. The other was a card from someone who listens to my content and uses my content, but has also become a friend. And she just wanted to say thank you for encouraging her through the content that's being created. I also received another message via email. This was 2 days ago from a listener who simply asked me to pray for him about something that's been very discouraging during this season of life. And one of the things you'll notice when you develop a podcast in particular, that becomes a more trusting relationship than I think many of us realize that it is. When somebody is listening to your voice as you're teaching or encouraging in a variety of ways, they may make you part of their daily routine. And so people that listen to your content develop a friendship with you, even if they don't directly know you. And this gentleman reached out and said, listen, I'm dealing with this very discouraging thing, and I wondered if you'd just lift me up in prayer. And so I replied and said, absolutely. And I made a point to pray for that individual the second that I read his message. I was happy to do that. I considered it a privilege to do that. In sharing these examples from just recent experience that I've had is to encourage us to be thinking about something bigger than trivial things. I want us to understand, I want to highlight the fact that we have the opportunity to be very, very helpful to other people's lives with what we're creating. And I think that should be a great motivator when we get behind a microphone or when we get behind a camera or when we get behind a keyboard. We've been entrusted with the opportunity to make the lives of other people better. That is a very big deal. And that's something certainly worth investing our time in. And so let me say this as I kind of land this plane for this week. If you're wrestling whether to aim for fame or to strive to be helpful as you're building your online platform, I would encourage you to choose the latter. Fame lasts for just a moment and then it's gone, just like a quick puff of smoke. But the help that you offer others might improve their lives drastically. And here's something else to think about. It may not only improve their lives, but it may improve the lives of those that they influence. So it might even have a generational benefit to those that are in their lives as well. So your influence helping somebody else, encouraging somebody else in a very specific way could end up becoming a long-term benefit, not only to them, but also to their family because you made the decision to prioritize being helpful over being famous. I actually think that some of the most trivial and trite platforms that I see online, particularly in the world of social media, are just overly focused on just highlighting the person to the point where it's almost like they just want a constant pat on the back or a constant reminder that, oh, you're beautiful or you look so great or you've done this or done that. That is not a very helpful thing. But if you're focused on producing content that actually makes the lives of other people better, that's a much more gratifying way to produce platform-related content. And I hope that that's what you'll consider. And here's the other thing. As you help others, they're going to help you. You're going to be able to build something of lasting value as you focus on solving the problems and meeting the needs of those who actually reach out to you for help. So just keep that in mind. I hope that that's something that will encourage you. And again, remember Bill Murray's example as well. I don't think that man, he's 72 years old right now, and he is not enamored with his fame. He achieved fame, and he looks at it and he's like, you know what? It wasn't as great as I would have thought that it was. I think in many respects he found it rather lonely. And you know, at this season of his life, it sounds like he's being rather reflective about that. So take his counsel to heart and don't make that something that you overly prioritize as you build your front-facing public platform. Couple things before we finish up this week. One of the things that I haven't mentioned it in the past few weeks, but I want to highlight it today. If you would be interested in joining our members club, I'd love to invite you to take a 14-day test drive of our members club. You could just go to platformlaunchers.com and you'll have access to our video library when you take that test drive. Our full video library, hundreds of hours of video content to help you build your online platform. You'll also have access to our community where you can interact with others who are in our members club. You'll also be able to join us for a couple weeks of live training and see if this is a good fit for you. And then maybe you decide to become a long-term member of the group and we can work together to help you build your online platform. We'd love to invite you to give it a try. Again, you can find that all at platformlaunchers.com and you can take that 14-day free test drive and see what you think. But that's it for us this week. Thanks so much for joining us. As always, we're grateful to have you here. And I wish you all the best. Be helpful in the content that you're creating. And I look forward to catching up with you again right here next time. Take care.